Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Monday. Welcome back to the World Championship Series of America. This is the Challenger League. We just finished up with the Premier League last week. Of course, I'm Axel Toss, joined by Axlav. And I was on vacation last week, so huge thanks to Sham2 and, of course, Rotterdam for filling in. They did a great job. You actually solo casted a couple matches, too. So good job to you, Nick. You're a good guy.
Thank you, sir. Of course, we will be back with the Premier League round of 16 next week. But this week is going to be kicking off the Challenger Division. And the way the Challenger Division works is a bracket stage. Some players do very well in the bracket stage. They join the Premier Division. And then if they lose in the bracket stage, they have to play in the group stage, kind of similar to the up and downs from the GSL. Of course, all this week is going to be the first round of that bracket stage.
Exactly. So, you know, the point here is you're going to have a lot of chances. If you're in Challenger League, you're going to have, you know, you can lose a few times and still make it out of your group, still make it into, you know, Premier League or into Challenger League. But I think only 8 players actually drop out of the entire Challenger League, which get filled in through qualifiers later on. So what you need to remember is you got to win. I mean, winning is obviously what you want to do. This is StarCraft 2. That's pretty intuitive, but that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be covering the first round of the bracket stage, all these best of 3s to determine who's going to come one step closer to getting back into that Premier League or to getting into Premier League from, you know, of course, 4 of these players ended up coming through qualifiers to get to the Challenger League.
That's right. So, of course, this is today's matchups.
Yep.
TheOgnis versus JaeDong, Major, Xenocider, Phoenix, Bales, Vibe, Sagen. We'll talk a little more about today in a bit, but let's go through the rest of the week real quick first. Lots
of matches coming your way, guys. Again, every single day at 6 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be 100% live here on twitch.tv/WCS_America. Tell all your friends this is going on. Of course, Tuesday, we see Maker, the Muslim Illusion, Max said, Minigun, Ian, Killer Top, and there's a theme throughout all these graphics. The players on the left are those who dropped from the Premier League, having gotten either 3rd or 4th. Remember, the top 16, they get to come live in studio next week. That's going to be awesome. Of course, on the right, those are the players who fought hard in qualifiers to get to this point. Of course, the Muslim, one of the favorites, I think, to try to make it into that Premier Division.
That's right. He did very well in those qualifying matches. Took out a lot of great players. Let's take a look at Wednesday. We're going to have another 4 matchups on Wednesday. That's going to be Hart versus Tasia, State versus Drunken Boy, Ghost User versus Hwansing, and Idra versus Puck.
Yes, Idra versus Puck. A few recent developments. You know, after that match he had against Pult, and those series of matches he had last week should be an interesting storyline there. Going up against Puck, a great up-and-coming North American player on Root Gaming. But, you know, that's a theme of all these matches. There's so much variety of players. You got Codes Koreans in Tasia. You got players who were once really, really good and they're trying to stay up there, kind of like Idra. You got up-and-comers like Puck, who are really trying to make a statement.
Puck was actually the guy who knocked out Hyun of the Challenger League qualifier. So the reason why there was 2 players from the WCS Korea Premier League, Tasia and Hyun, who tried to transfer to America. Tasia made it through those qualifiers. Hyun did not, in fact. Puck was like, nah, man. This is
USA,
my land.
Man.
Yeah, so so Hyun had to fold down. Of course, let's talk about the last section of Thursday, exactly. Last days we'll do today, or this week, excuse me.
Yep.
Oz versus Jim, Kapach versus Tilly, Hello Kitty versus XY, and Huck versus Neeb.
Interesting little group there. We got, well, they're not necessarily in a group, but interesting lineup there. We got 5 Protosses and 3 Terrans. That should be a very fun day for you Protosses and Terrans out there. And Zerg people, you can have some fun too. Maybe learn about the other matchups as well. But yeah, lots of awesome StarCraft coming your way. Of course, Tilia, I think she's a player who kind of switches between races a little bit too.
She does. She used to play random. Now she focuses mostly on Zerg and Terran.
Yes.
And she kind of race picks depending on the matchup. So we may see her even mix it up.
Yep.
Terran, Zerg. She doesn't really like Protoss quite as much, but I think she's going to be a big story. People can be looking out to see how well she does. And also Jim. Jim is a guy, you know, a lot of people say he's the best player from China right now. I think he was number 1 on the Korean GM, like within the last week. He's all killed Team EG. He's done so well in all these recent events. How well can he make it in? This is going to be his first, basically, Premier League event. Or first, I mean, he's not a Premier League yet, but Premier event is WCS.
And he's going against Oz, which is a pretty tough, you know, matchup there. I mean, Oz, one of the players that actually dropped out of the round of 32 Premier League. Oz, one of the the best players, honestly, in that round of 32 premiere, but he was in a very tough group, so that should be a very interesting match. That's coming on Thursday, but yeah, guys, Monday through Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you tune in. We're going to be live here, WCS_America. That's twitch.tv. So, that brings us to today, and I know a lot of people are excited for what's coming up first. Of course, it's going to be TheOgnis versus JaeDong, and there's a little bit of a story that hit an hour ago. I messaged TheOgnis, and I'm like, hey, are you going to beat JaeDong? And he's like, check my Twitter in 5 minutes. So I kept hitting refresh on his Twitter, and you guys need to go check his Twitter. It's at TheOgnis. He combined the T's because he's on Root, and TheOgnis is the T's in the middle. Go check his Twitter. It's pretty hilarious. I don't think a description from me would do it justice, but he's representing the USA today.
That's
Not
right.
the newspaper, Nick. I know you're confused.
Of course, a great player. He's had a lot of experience. He's one of the few North American players who's really devoted their lives to the game, taking some time off to just focus exclusively on StarCraft. So I have a lot of high hopes for how well he'll do. Of course, he's up against JaeDong, who's basically a living legend in Brood War. JaeDong is such a monster. You know, him and Flash are two of the most well-recognized names from Brood War. He's won 9 major championship events in Brood War. He hasn't quite had that same level of success in StarCraft 2 yet, but he's a staple for EGTL and the Pro League, and he's looking to make his big footprint in the individual leagues here in WCS America.
Absolutely. JaeDong is a name that everyone should fear. He has a ridiculous amount of legacy, not only in StarCraft 2, but of course in StarCraft, where most people know him as the Tyrant. And it's going to be JaeDong versus TheOgnis. I'm asking the players if they're ready. TheOgnis says he is ready, so we're waiting on a response from JaeDong. Again, we are live here, so make sure you get on Twitter, get on Team Liquid, get on Reddit. Tell people this is going on because I think it's doable. I think it's doable for TheOgnis. A lot of people are going to say, all right, JaeDong 2-0. But remember the first game we casted in Season 1 of the World Championship Series of America, Mr. Axlife. Do you remember that game?
I do. That was a pretty crazy game.
What was it?
That was TheOgnis?
No.
No?
No, it's from the qualifier. Remember? Come on.
Oh,
yes.
Looking back that far, that was
the very first game.
JaeDong versus. I played the guy in ladder. Right after that, I played him in ladder. It was a Zerg, no creativity.
Everyone's shouting at the screen. Axlife, it is.
It was a young Zerg player from America.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you?
No, I didn't see Scooby-Doo. I'm sorry, I didn't neglect the full childhood.
Mystery,
that's what it was. And Mystery won the first game, then lost the next 2, unfortunately.
Yeah. But JaeDong is, you know, he does have some little gaps in his armor that you can try to go after. All right, so.
You know what's cool about that is Mystery played a really he didn't do anything crazy.
Right.
He played a standard game and just had really good speed and ability control. It wasn't like some weird, I hope I catch this Korean giant off guard, I'm a 6-form or something. It was just a pretty standard ZVZ.
Yeah.
I thought very impressive. He went, mechanic versus mechanic against JaeDong, who's,
Mystery's not a bad. He's not a bad player. But you can check all those games out. YouTube.com/official MLGSE2. Every game we broadcast here on stream should be on that YouTube channel. Even, of course, the matches from last week, which, of course, the round of 32 of the Premier League. And that live event is coming our way soon. The round of 16 here at the studio starts next week. I'm pretty darn excited for that. Of course, some pretty insane groups have been developed from those.
They have.
Yeah.
They have. There's the round of 16 is insanely stacked.
Yes.
And it's like you mentioned, live in the studio is going to be absolutely amazing to have those guys right here on site. I'm really cheering for Suppy. I used to live kind of near him. I used to hang out sometimes. He's an awesome guy.
Some videos came out recently of his YouTube, and he has his YouTube, and it goes back to when he was a kid, like 9 years old, and he has videos of him like talking trash to people. It's actually hilarious. You guys should definitely check that out. It was on Reddit this morning. I frequent Reddit a lot, I'll be honest. But it's cool to see a guy with such a lot of personality, not only now, but from the very beginning of when he started playing, when he started getting involved in the competitive scene. And he's very active on Team Liquid as well. So Suppy, definitely a guy that's very fun to cheer for on Team Evil Geniuses, which JaeDong is as well.
That's right. That's right. A little bit of a teammate situation there.
Yeah. And honestly, Idra, let's see, how many Zergs do they have left? 3, 2?
Without Idra anymore, it'd
it's Stefano, JaeDong, Suppy.
That's right.
Right? Am I missing any?
Machine.
I hope I'm not. Machine, of course.
That's right.
So it's 4. All right. JaeDong needs to
JaeDong needs to come back from wherever he is.
He does.
You know what?
What's up?
JaeDong may be using the Musashi tactic.
What's the Can you say that again? I don't know if I can pronounce that correctly.
Musashi.
Musashi.
Yeah, one of the most famous sword fighters of all time from Japan.
Okay.
And
is this the guy who trained Arya in Game of Thrones?
Yes.
Wait, really?
No. But that guy could have been based off of.
Who would win? The guy who was training Arya or Musashi?
I think it might be Musashi because he was the expert at mind games. Like the guy training Arya may be like the most skilled guy.
Okay.
But Musashi would do things. He would show up to duels.
Yeah.
He would show up like 2 hours late.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
And the other guy, because they have a appointed time, they're supposed to show up and fight to the death, right?
Well, isn't there a penalty if you show up late?
No. This is like ancient Japan, dude. There's fight to the death anyway. So,
okay.
So they just show up. The other guy's pissed off. He's being disrespected for him showing up so late. Looks like JaeDong's here, so we can start the game.
Yay, JaeDong.
And then he'd also show up with like a wooden sword, right?
Yes.
And then so the other guy's like, he's not taking me seriously. The other guy would just be pissed off and just charge him. And then his wooden sword, though, would be extra long. He'd just smack him in the head really hard with it, using the fact that they were so angry they weren't like...
So he would win with the wooden sword?
Yeah. It would still kill him if you hit him hard enough, right?
I guess.
Yeah.
Well, again, there's a lot of
of
ties here between, the sword master in Game of Thrones too,
That's
because
right.
the last battle he was doing work with the wooden sword. No spoilers. I don't want to spoil anyone. All right, here we are. Both players have said they're ready, and we are into the game. This is game one of a best of three to determine who's going to move on in the Challenger League. A very important match we have in our hands. At the top right-hand location, we have the Blue Zerg player from Team Evil Geniuses. He is JaeDong. And of course, his opponent in the bottom left-hand location, the red Terran player representing Team Root Gaming and the United States of America. In the color red, he is TheOgnis.
Here's the question. Will those delaying tactics of JaeDong work against TheOgnis? Is it going to throw him off his game a bit, the fact that he had to wait in the lobby for about 3 to 4 minutes
the nerves there are, I would expect to be pretty big. Like, you can obviously directly relate to that. You've been in that type of situation before where you're waiting in the lobby. I don't know what you're waiting for, but, perhaps the other player, perhaps your keyboard, you're finalizing some settings. But, talk about your experiences with that, Mr. Xlev.
So it is interesting. What can happen is you're kind of psyched up and mentally ready for the game to go. Your adrenaline's at like this, not like spiked, but your body's kind of ready to just like be right in the zone. Your instincts are there.
Yes.
But then if you sit around and do nothing for 4 minutes, that feeling can kind of leave you, and you can kind of get a little more lethargic. You can kind of be thrown off your game a little bit.
Yep.
And the important thing is to be able to just re-get into that zone when the game gets on, because it's hard to stay in that like I'm going to be focused and 100%. It's hard to stay in that 100% zone for a few minutes when nothing's happening. So TheOgnis, of course, is going to have to get right back in that zone. And it's not like it's something he's not used to. I mean, anyone who's a veteran of competitive anything has got to learn how to turn on and off that focus mode, because you can't be focused all the time. You have to learn when to let your mind take a break. But you have to also learn how to instantly put it back in that killer instinct mode.
All right. Very interesting knowledge there, Mr. Nick. I like it. And I don't see any glaring mistakes that have just started. StarCraft's a game where it's like, all that being said before, the beginning of the game, as far as, how it impacts the rest, it's very simple stuff, right? As far as you've done these things millions and millions of times, I should say. So it's not like it's as difficult as, someone just thrusting, running at you with a sword, right? As you were saying before. So you have more time to get in your groove, tapping your fingers on the keyboard, getting that APM up, and getting comfortable. So, thus far, nothing crazy going on. But TheOgnis, I like the decision, making the command center on the low ground. This is how he plays. He doesn't care that he's playing JaeDong. He doesn't care that JaeDong is one of the best players to have ever played an RTS game. He will go to a late game, and he will be happy going to a late game.
TheOgnis has said time and time again he favors just a mechanical macro game where it's about macro and multitasking and micro over creative kind of funky builds trying to catch your opponent off guard. He doesn't value that quite as much. And that's something that, differs from player to player. Some players really love to be creative, and some just say, you know what, I want to focus on the game fundamentals. TheOgnis is one of those guys. You can see he's going to progress up to that factory. You can assume there's going to be a reactor built on the barracks right after this next Marine comes out.
Very standard opening here from TheOgnis. Standard for the matchup, not necessarily against his opponent, because again, you know, we're talking about a game one, right? A game one where you have the ability to throw in some crazy cheese type play. You have the ability to try to take your opponent off guard because it's not necessarily a deciding game. So a lot of players will decide to do something like that. And we're seeing JaeDong put down a Roach Horn. Speed is about to finish. He's keeping guys on gas here.
TheOgnis, though, look at this SCV patrolling at JaeDong's third base. JaeDong's so good, he's going to spot it, but the whole goal here is, I mean, if that wasn't spotted for another minute or so, TheOgnis would have known for sure it's roaches. As it is, I think you can be fairly confident it's likely to be roaches, because 2-hatch tech builds aren't very common on Daybreak in Zerg vs. Terran. It's pretty rare. There are, you know, some Zergs will tech to mutas or whatever off 2-hatch on other maps, but Daybreak, it's rare. So coming back here and again see no 3rd hatch, oh, he didn't quite get back there.
Yeah,
but
the speed kicked in on the link, so he was able to chase him.
He didn't know at about the 5:45 mark there was no 3rd hatch even started. And that's late enough that he has to be pretty confident there's at least some type of aggression coming at him, just because the fast tech isn't so popular on Daybreak.
He's a 3rd command center, just now started up a Marauder.
He's getting the Marauder, though.
Bunker.
I think
how scared should TheOgnis be?
I think as long as he has the Marauder, he should be fine. He's going to have almost 2 Marauders out, which is a really big difference. If you just have, you know, 3-4 Marines and no Marauders, versus having 1 done and a second one almost done.
Yeah, because he can retreat to his main. Like, that's an important distinction to be able to make here.
He may not even need to with no baitings. He could probably just repair these buildings, but he's got to get SCVs out there really quickly.
There's 3 SCVs that are going to try to start repairing that bunker. The Ling's going to get a great amount of surface around it, but lots of SCVs here. The Marauder is going to get taken out, and now he's going to have to flee into his main base. That so important Marauder is gone. There's another one in production. Going to pop out. That supply depot should be lifted. The SCV is going to try to be pulled to tank a little bit here. Some SCVs getting taken down in the natural expansion, but I don't see him dying to this. How many SCVs did he lose there?
He's lost enough that JaeDong can probably macro out of this. You know, it was very unfortunate that he didn't unload that bunker backwards and save those 3 units, because that was about half his damage output at this time against the roaches. So going forward, he is going to hold this attack. He won't lose many more SCVs.
Right.
But just how long it's taking him to recover the low ground, it's really not a super comfortable position against a Zerg who didn't really fully commit. There was no baiting nest behind us.
All right, yeah, we're seeing JaeDong go up in drones here, 46 to 34. These roaches are going to get cleaned up. Still more roaches in production behind this too, but maybe just defensive roaches there to defend against the inevitable Hellion, you know, counter aggression. But we see some drones mixed in there, starting up with the +1 missile attack. So it looks like he wants to stick with that type of composition as far as, you know, he's not researching melee right now, right? So it's not like he's going for that mass link play. So a very interesting decision being made there, and his 3rd is just now going out there to be planted down, putting 4 gases in his main and natural. Layer's already done too.
This makes it look like JaeDong wants to do a secondary timing, perhaps with Roach speed and +1, and maybe another 2 to 3 minutes. So that's something that TheOgnis actually is going to have to look out for. Oh, not going to be able to quite get that hatchery. Of course, he doesn't want to send the Marauders across the map because he knows JaeDong has Zergling speed. A small force of Marauders who just get surrounded and torn to pieces. So very smart that he's keeping those back. I think one thing that's going to go well for TheOgnis is he actually got his 2nd and 3rd barracks before the 2E base. And normally that's not what Terran wants to do because you really want to get ahead in those upgrades. But against a Zerg player who's looking for a speed roach timing is what it looks like JaeDong's probably going to go for here. Having all those extra Marines being produced that much earlier can make a big difference.
So what is TheOgnis going to be looking for here? Like, what does he need to do to be able to identify what JaeDong is doing and then properly defend against him?
He's got to be very diligent in scouting a 3rd base. Of course, actually, JaeDong, 13 more drones and a 4th hatchery. Maybe just play Roach Hydra macro and then try to play a longer game. Of course, that can be tricky if the Terran gets a very large force and if they are able to start the drop machine rolling. A lot of Zergs have a hard time defending drops using this style. But of course, JaeDong's multitasking is pretty much some of the best in the world. So TheOgnis wants to keep checking the 3rd base of JaeDong to check that drone saturation.
Yeah, and we got a link counterattack coming forward here. Going to try to keep this 3rd from getting down there. Great job dropping that creep. Widowmine going to burrow a little bit too late. Link's going to swing into the natural expansion, at least try to. Widowmine shot should go. Ooh. And there go a bunch of Lings. Great job there from TheOgnis defending against that. And JaeDong able to identify exactly what his opponent is doing. What do you make of his choice of going for this, what seems to be Roach Hydra composition?
I mean, most Zergs think Roach Hydra is not that good on Daybreak. JaeDong apparently disagrees. It could just be he's had so much practice with this style, that even on a map that's typically not as great for Roach Hydra, he's gonna still go for it. And the reason why Roach Hydra isn't quite as great on Daybreak, for a lot of people's opinions, is the map distance is long enough that rallying your units across the map to attack is a bigger concern. And Roach's Hydra just both moves slower than speedlings, meatless, speed banings. And also the fact that drop play can be really tough on Daybreak when going Roach Hydra.
Yes.
And it's hard to get those nice surrounds on your opponent. There's so many kind of passageways they can establish a concave on the other side of, that if your opponent positions well, it's hard to end a game early with Roach Hydra. And in the late game, when Bio gets 3-3 and a high medevac count, you really need to add something else into your army.
Which is where, Vipers could be an option. Blinding Cloud can be decent.
Ooh, medevacs, TheOgnis, you gotta be a little more careful.
Every unit is so important. Well, he is going to identify his opponent's unit composition, so he should have no doubts whatsoever. And, I agree with your point. I think creep spread is going to be very important here for JaeDong as well. Roach Hydra already isn't that mobile of a composition. If you can get that creep spread out and make it a little bit more mobile than it, originally is, that can definitely help a lot.
One thing that actually really makes a lot of sense for JaeDong's unit choice is the fact that JaeDong is a multitasking expert. While TheOgnis loves a straightforward macro game, the more directions the attention is drifted, the more favorable it's going to be for JaeDong, as that's really his zone. So the standard counter to this is heavy drop play, but JaeDong's probably really comfortable. I mean, we can see there how easily he dealt with that drop. I think he's got to be very comfortable in this multitasking situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit interesting there that TheOgnis only sent one drop. Of course, he lost another medevac, so that might have had something to do with it, where, originally he could pick up 2 medevacs and send one to the mains and one to the third, and really try to spread JaeDong out apart, really test that unit composition. But since he lost that earlier medevac, maybe that's kind of felt there. He's only able to drop in the main base, and JaeDong's going to be able to easily deal with that. Meanwhile, we see JaeDong spreading out along the top side of the map here, perhaps looking out for drops. We have a drop in the main base, going to get pecked away. And now he's going to try to be aggressive towards that third, but there are Widow Mines there. Well, just one, and a bunker. So we'll have to see how effective this can be.
JaeDong wants to get some damage here, but if TheOgnis repositions those siege tanks, he should be able to defend just fine. That one Widow Mine is going to be taken out.
Overseer. Of course, the Hydras do outrange that. At the same time, the drop's still chilling up there at the north. There's a drop at the bottom of the map as well. But Hydras and Roaches charging into this third base, taking down some supply depots. TheOgnis trying to hold with Marines and Marauders, going to siege up 2 tanks. And SCV is desperately trying to repair this command center. But, JaeDong just trying to get his 4th base set up, trying to get some even trades, and just trying to limit his opponent's economy as much as possible.
Oh, JaeDong's more than ready for this drop here over to third. Plenty of Roaches. The Marines just die instantly as they're dropped out. TheOgnis sacrifices a few to the Zerg gods there and realizes that, okay, let's pull these guys back and not drop them into the claws of the Roaches. And JaeDong joining up so heavily behind us.
See him taking a spot here in the middle of the map, of course, watching over that 4th base, making sure to delay that as long as possible. Hydra's taken down a medevac. TheOgnis has to be careful with that, sieging up his tanks. And a great concave here from TheOgnis, and he's going to have to back away. Great trade there for TheOgnis.
It is. Of course, the Marine's faster than Hydra. It's now some reinforcements for JaeDong come in, but the Marines should be fine just backing away to that siege tank line.
Yeah. I would move those up a little bit. That's exactly what TheOgnis is going to do. I mean, once TheOgnis can set up these four bases, it's much easier to defend his bases behind them, unless, of course, drops are starting to be utilized. Of course, speaking of drops, there is one at the third. Going to get cleaned up, but this middle base is a nice pivot location. You go attack the south, attack the north. We saw this in Idra versus Polt. We saw Polt do a great job utilizing that point and just trying to deny those bases from Idra. So we'll have to see if TheOgnis decides to go for a similar strategy.
He was thinking about pushing along the bottom, but very intelligently, he left the Marine on the top when he saw JaeDong going for that counter. His army was there. JaeDong's army looks too small to deal with this.
Yeah, those are Stim Marines and Rogers. He's going to scan. He's going to be patient, take down some creep. And not too many medevacs in this composition, only 3, and they don't have a lot of energy. So TheOgnis has to be careful in that regard. JaeDong sees all of this, but this is another one of those situations on Daybreak where it's going to be hard to engage if the Terran player controls properly, positions properly, sieging up those tanks on the high ground. JaeDong thought about going for it, but I don't think that's the best idea because that's a lot of DPS coming out of this Terran army.
Oh, these Marines are so well upgraded. 2-2 versus 2-2. Blinding Clouds go for it. TheOgnis runs forward instead of backing away. Realizes that might not have been the right choice. Now backs up to those siege tanks.
Yeah, and you know, TheOgnis is going to be happy with all of this, of course. Got to keep those tanks alive, got to keep the medevacs alive, but he's okay losing Marines. However, this Marines are very low in health. We got some more Marines coming in from the bottom side of the map. TheOgnis just rallying directly across the field. He's trying to take down this base, and I think he might be able to. JaeDong does not have an answer just yet, trying to reinforce with as many roaches as possible. TheOgnis might even try to pick up and get out of here. No, he's going to hold strong for now.
Medevacs with upgraded Marines trade very well against roaches once the numbers are decent. Blinding Cloud forces him back, but he took out a lot of those spine crawlers. And really importantly, JaeDong had to use his entire bank to deal with that, which means his Ultra transition is further away now than it was before. And he's, I mean, TheOgnis still has a great army on the field.
He does, and we see a counterattack being attempted here from JaeDong, going to be taking down some tanks. That's so important at the top side of the map while sending some roaches to the bottom. Vipers coming forward here, looking for those blinding clouds. JaeDong making the best of this situation, sending in some more speedlings and roaches, and now TheOgnis is the one in trouble trying to fend off this attack.
JaeDong keeps pouring on the pressure. The Vipers use blinding cloud. They're out of energy now. So many medevacs from TheOgnis. Once it gets to the small, scrappy battles, he's just not losing any units.
Yep. Yep. I mean, look at all those medevacs, by the way. That's a lot of medevacs in Mr. Axelot. 10 medevacs on the field. Again, it's so important to keep those alive. The tanks, too, the bio you can replenish all day long. He has this base in the middle, mining nothing but minerals. He's going to start getting excess gas here because of his unit composition choice. And now I'm wondering, all right, where's that transition into the Ultras? We have just now +1 melee attacks being added on here from JaeDong, still making Hydras. So there's still going to be a good amount of time before those units can come out onto the field.
Of course, JaeDong needs units that produce quickly as there's so much of a threat to his fourth base, taking out a few medevacs. I think TheOgnis needs to wait for his bio to grow just a little bit bigger and then launch another attack. He could perhaps even wait till he maxes out, but no, he's going to go right now with only 2 siege tanks, a small bio force.
Don't want to overextend.
I think he may be overextending. There's a lot of creep here.
All right, JaeDong turning around. The blinding clouds going down. The Marines Marauder just going to go even further forward, but you got to stay within that tank range, and you got to not overextend. Keep in mind, 3-3 is in play here for TheOgnis. He's going to be happy with his upgrade advantage because the 3 Carapace is just now on the way here for JaeDong. And now these Hydras aren't going to be enough. This hatchery is definitely going to be vulnerable. Evo Chamber getting taken down. TheOgnis taking a base at the top left-hand side of the map. He's playing this pretty darn well.
He is. JaeDong has to give up that 4th base. JaeDong needs those infestors to come out of the field. 5 are being produced. Muddy Fungos are his way back in the game, of course. He has that bottom right base, so he's still in an okay position with 4 bases if he can take a really strong engagement. But he's down by 50 food, and TheOgnis is continuing to push forward.
If there's a way to come back, it's going to be with those infestors. You got to wait for TheOgnis to clump up that bio army and then go in for one deep attack, or just poke and prod with those infestors from afar. Maybe take advantage of this location on the ramp, but TheOgnis coming forward. He's got to split up the units. Great fungos there from JaeDong, getting a lot of medevacs as well. Doesn't have enough units, though. Trying to come in with the Lings and Roaches, but a great concave here from TheOgnis. Still has tanks in this army. Blinding Cloud going down onto those, but TheOgnis just going to extend into his bonus national expansion, and there's the GG. JaeDong falling in game 1 against TheOgnis.
Yeah, not what a lot of people would expect there, and you know, TheOgnis didn't really look to have any problems that game. I mean, maybe he could have dealt with that initial rush slightly better, but he still came out of that maybe even.
Yeah.
And then going forward, trying to play Roach Hydra macro, even if you defend it drops well, once it gets to these large-scale armies, Roach Hydra just needs to, you know, like the fungal growth, it needs amazing blinding clouds.
Yeah.
And you know, he did have the Vipers, but I feel like every time they fought, it was in a position where the Vipers couldn't really trap the army inside blinding clouds. It was always an open where TheOgnis could maneuver around those blinding clouds, and so the Vipers were mitigated, and then stat for stat, Bio was just going to dominate Roach Hydra once they both hit those large-scale armies.
I think TheOgnis did a great job of playing to the map of Daybreak, getting that great composition out of Marines, Marauders, and tanks, taking advantage of those positions, because if you start pushing down one of those hallways with your tanks, with your Marines, Marauders, how does the Zerg engage that? how do they do? Like, do they try to send a portion of their army all the way around? That's very difficult to do. JaeDong is certainly capable, but I think TheOgnis just did a great job of playing to the map and going for that strategy of choice. Also, securing that 4th base as fast as possible, using that as a pivot point. But guys, that's going to conclude Game 1 of this best of 3 between JaeDong and TheOgnis. TheOgnis is up 1-0. You're watching the World Championship Series Challenger League. Don't go anywhere.